Marjolein is the first Dutch futures ecologist with a master's degree in marine ecology, and she interweaves the wisdom of nature with emerging technologies to reimagine our futures. I'm going to try to shorten this up for time. She's a member of the Critical Midwifery Studies Collective, and she initiated Birth Futures in 2022, which is a speculative program dedicated to reimagining birth care through innovative design and social dreaming. And she works with researchers, midwives, and mothers. And her method has been recognized in the Dutch National Manual Futures Thinking. And she's a fellow of the Next Nature Network. And Susana Carbonell is a registered midwife in Ontario, Canada. But most importantly, she's a member of our organizing committee, and we could not do without her. Before starting her career in Canada, she obtained her bachelor's degree in midwifery in Peru, as well as a master's degree in sexual and reproductive health. She's been a clinical preceptor and a midwifery instructor, both in Peru and Canada. She's involved in global health projects, and she has recently been accepted. I don't know how recently. I think you're well into your program, right? A PhD program in global health from McMaster University. So I am going to go ahead and turn the the session over to you all, and we're looking forward to hearing your thoughts. Who's going first?
Hey,
Go.
Marjolein, you want me to count? Maybe I can do like a short introduction and then you can pick up after me. I think that's good, maybe. So yeah, thank you very much. Thank you so much, Catherine, and everyone who's here, that we get to share this project, this program with you. It was born from a desire to reimagine birth care. And because I have a background, I've got a degree in ecology, I studied biology, and I also worked as a designer. I decided to combine those two to reimagine birth care, because I feel that the way we try to imagine birth care sometimes is not aligned with the things, at least when I was pregnant, that I saw around me. I didn't recognize myself in the images around birth and what birth was like, even in the Netherlands, which is like recognized around the world as a place where there's still home birth, which there is. But even here, it wasn't broad enough, or like it didn't include all the images that I think we need there. And specifically, I mean, with respect to technology and to the possibilities of medical innovations, we sometimes lose sight of the other things that are really, really important in birth, which is community and support and nature and ecology. And that's what I tried to bring into this project. Because like the text says on this slide, if we cannot imagine this different future, what it can look like, how can we create it? Next slide, please. So just a little background on futures. I'm a speculative designer, which means that I do not design like chairs or tables. I try to make stories and design stories where we explore possible futures. And there's not like one future. In the West, in the Netherlands, where I'm from, we tend to imagine time as a line, as linear, and a future as like one thing. But if we look at it, there's actually multiple futures, because everyone will imagine the future in a different way. And the further we venture into the future, and in this project, we looked as far as the year 2100, there's very little we can be sure of in that future. So all of these ideas that people have on the future are valid. And then some futures can be different than others. So we move fast. I mean, I speak fast, but not that fast. Catherine, can we go back?
Hold on a second. Now I was trying to do something else. Why are we?
We have to go back, I think, 3
I know,
slides.
I'm trying. How can we get back? Oh, there.
So
Vision. There we go.
one more back.
No,
Yeah.
futures.
So maybe this is a really fitting example of time. Like time is linear. Presentations are supposed to be linear, right? You go from one to the next. But actually, time can also be seen as circular, which you see in many indigenous cultures as well. And that's what these speculative designs are as well. We try to imagine multiple futures, and even people are saying we have to imagine multiple nows and multiple histories. So that's all part of having an open mind, an open approach towards reimagining birth care systems, because whose systems are we designing for whom and in whose benefit? And that's also with futures. So that's what we're trying to do. Next slide, please. So the vision that we have for this project is to have like a collective movement or action towards having every expectant parent and newborn, and irrespective of background, receiving holistic and human-centered care, and that's really important. And that birth is approached as an empowering experience supported by all of these services and community involvement, and also technology and medicine. Next slide. Susana, maybe you can pick up here and tell a little bit about the challenges also from the critical midwifery studies collective perspective before I pick up again with the first project we did in the Netherlands.
Yeah.
Is that okay for you?
Of course, yeah. So there is a little background history and personal history between Marjolein and I, and this project was actually an effort from Dreaming. If anything, like they presented us with our titles, with what we do, what we are hoping to do, right? But in reality I think we are coming from a group of dreamers, and our dreams started to be similar and different in the same way. And those dreams came from some challenges that we have discussed with some other of our colleagues and friends around the world. And it came from this critical midwifery studies collective. When most of us identify that 91% of women worldwide experience obstetric violence during childbirth at any form. Either could be physical as also economical, because some people cannot afford the kind of care that they deserved and they need. Women and neighbors are marginalized groups that face a higher risk of mortality and morbidity, especially in crisis, as we're experiencing now. It doesn't necessarily need to be natural disasters or anything, but even migration crisis, political crisis, and the rapid technologization and potentially the centering pregnant person's experience. So everything is based on outcomes. Okay, there's a decrease of maternal mortality, fine, but nobody cares about what happens in terms of the quality of care that it's provided, that is centered on the experience of people. And midwives' expertise are often underutilized in policymaking and care model design. You're going to notice over the course of the presentation that particularly it was very vivid, the idea that midwives, even though that we've been screaming and saying that how important midwifery is, there's so many studies, there's so many policy statements or so, but still, we are invisible in many power dynamic decisions, and nobody talks about birth. Like, the reason we talk about birth is either because we're midwives, because we become midwives, or because we become pregnant and have babies. Otherwise, the discourse of birth is null in any other society, and it's something that happens to all of us. We're here because we were birthed some on one way or the other. So it usually is positioned as a very painful event, a very negative event, and something that people are actually scared sometimes to talk about. You can go to the next ones, Catherine. So our approach for this workshop, the pictures that you're seeing there is a workshop that we hosted in Peru. And this couldn't have been done without the collective work with the College of Midwives of Peru in 2024. So the idea was to facilitate a future-oriented workshop with midwives, obstetras, and other healthcare providers and service users. And we tried to develop a speculative design protocols to explore innovative care models. So the most outrageous or the most insane ideas will come into this space because the imagination is unlimited. And even from those things that might not seem very realistic, you can find some categories, some codes that you can actually start thinking of how you can make this real. And finally, from that idea, build a toolkit to integrate future thinking into healthcare practice and education and develop these prototypes of human-centered care. Connect and empower healthcare professionals worldwide who are providing human-centered care, but not only healthcare providers, but also you're going to see over the course of the presentation that we also invited service users to help us in dreaming this prototype that might help to create this one of the futures that we can imagine in terms of birth. Catherine, the next one. You want me to go to this one, Marjolein, or?
Yeah, I can pick it up here.
Yeah.
Thank you, Susana. It's a good, we switch back and forth. So one of the things we want to do and create besides the workshops is to have like sort of a space, like we call it a safe space or a sacred space that we can use to sort of show the stories that we created, that people created in the workshops, I must say, because we do very, we just provide the substrate and the materials that people can use to imagine their own ideas of what the future can look like. And I would really love for us to not just have that in the workshop, but also have a way to bring it to new workshops or to have this for a broader audience. So we want to have a space that can work as well as a workshop area, but also as an exhibit area. And we are working with artists from different countries to try and create this space as well. Next slide, please. Yeah. So this is an international collaboration. These are the 3 countries that we've done workshops so far, in the Netherlands, in Peru, and India. And from the start, it was very important to have a transnational project with this, because I think that birth, I mean, it's such a universal experience, obviously, wherever I go, wherever I travel, once you start talking about your kids or your birth, or, I mean, it's a way people connect. But also because I think if you take one, like with time, like it can be very linear, and if you just take a country's perspective, you miss so much of all of the other different ways you can approach birth. So through the Critical Midwifery Collective, I got into contact with Susana and also with Priya Sharma, who is from India and is currently back there. And we decided to do workshops in these countries. And I did a pilot workshop in the Netherlands. And we just want to take you through these 3 workshops with some of the findings that we had there and the experience that we have. So before I do that, go to the next slide, please. I just want to let you know that we have made a zine, a sort of like a magazine, a digital magazine, where we have some of the results collected in this magazine, and you can download it from the Birth Futures website. I'll just put the link in the chat in a bit when I'm done talking, because I cannot do 2 things at once. If you're interested, you can find much more information there after the session. Next slide, please. I also want to take the time, and Susana already mentioned it, the College of Midwives from Lima Callao, who hosted the Peru workshop, and also the Critical Midwifery Studies Collective, and also University where Susana is affiliated with, who also shared some of the results from the Peru workshop and helped us share these results. Next slide, please. Yeah, so I just want to take you to the Netherlands for a little bit, and not the Netherlands as it is now, but the Netherlands in the year 2100. Next slide, please. Yeah. So one of the things, and I don't know how well you know the Netherlands and what birth is like here. And of course, this is not a complete overview. These are the things that we collected and experienced, and also that came out of the workshop. And a lot of things, or an important thing to know is that there's a lot of fear of birth among pregnant people here. And whenever I talk to people, and it's not just anecdotal, a lot of people who are pregnant are afraid to give birth. And this fear really steers the decisions that are made, and also the way people are feeling when they're pregnant and during birth. This is partly to do with a lack of knowledge about physiology of birth, what actually happens during birth. Like, you don't want to know how many people joke but still think it's sort of true that you have to squeeze a lemon through a small hole. Like, those kind of jokes are still very rampant here. And I don't have to tell you how misogynist that is as well, but it also is underlying like a deeper just not knowing what actually happens to a person's body during pregnancy, during birth. And also we have independent midwifery care. We have home births that are assisted by skilled midwives, but it's under pressure and it's declining. So that's why I was interested in seeing how is physiological birth with these advanced technologies, how is that balanced, and is it even balanced? Next slide, please. Catherine, thank you. Yes, so some of the systemic issues that are here, and I already mentioned them, the fear of birth, medicalization, also the position of the independent midwife, and also systemic injustice and obstetric violence. So noted that it is not as like the numbers of obstetric violence that are experienced by women here, it's not as high as in other places in the world, but it's still, I think 19% of women experience obstetric violence during birth. And it's not just that, it is not recognized by the whole. There's campaigns every year to draw attention to this. And it is like, there's more discussions about this, but it's still very much between like gynecologists and midwives and healthcare professionals and people who experience this, and not outside of that. So this is definitely a problem in the Netherlands. Next slide. So when we did the workshop, this was a very mixed group of midwives, healthcare professionals, doulas. There were a few artists and researchers there as well. And they brainstormed on different trends and impacts, long-term trends and impacts on birth. And we tried to sort of cluster them together, and we came with these four like main impacts or main developments. And one had to do with like nature and humans and things that are connected with nature, but also with pollution, climate change, natural like physiological birth, developments like that are getting more attention. There's also something that we call the new society. It was beyond birth, like how are we living? How will the gap between rich and poor people, will it grow? Will it be smaller? How about capitalism as a system? Like, will it be still there? And mind you, we're talking about the year 2100, so that's pretty far into the future. We also discussed a lot of things around fear and experiences and knowledge, and about intergenerational knowledge transfer and the negative image of birth and the fear of labor. And then, of course, we also talked a lot about medical advancements and technologies like gene editing, surrogacy, fertility technology, the makeable child. So these were the things that they thought would have the most impact on birth in the future. Next slide. So in exploring this, we didn't just want to approach it through an analytical lens. We wanted people to create stories and to imagine like, okay, if this is something that's happening in the future, what would it be like? So we gave a lot of creative materials and images and templates for people to create, like literally create their own like birth stories from the future. So people went into a lot of different directions, and it was so interesting to see what they came up with. And there's no time to share them all with you, but some of them are in the zine. Next slide, please. Yeah, so I think for reframing perinatal care with speculative design, these are four of the really important things that came out of this workshop. It is about technology for empowerment to support the physiological birth. So put the physiological birth first, and the technology that will be created in the future or now is created now is about empowering women or birthing people and supporting this physiological birth. There's a lot of talk about normalizing birth, like have childbirth classes or have like classes about what happens during pregnancy and during birth at a young age in primary school, and have conversations about that, having children attend births. And interestingly enough, my eldest daughter attended my youngest son's birth, and it was completely a non-issue for her. So, I mean, that's just one experience, of course, but these were things they talked about as well. And I think the most important thing, which also influenced the later workshops, is to put childbirth in a larger societal context. Because I feel a lot of the time things are focused on this moment, or maybe the pregnancy itself and then the moment of birth, but not around like on the societal context, like what background people come from, the impact of poverty on pregnancy outcomes, for example. We can have technologies in that labor room all we want, but if we don't tackle the things in society, we will never actually improve birthing outcomes for the people who are disproportionately affected by these negative outcomes. So yeah, that's the final part as well. Finally, there were like 3 sort of main future visions, like what would be a positive, hopeful future in these future story, in these for perinatal care. And it would be around normalizing birth by shared experiences and education. There's also a part where there's lots of technology, but the technology is like caring and empathetic and human. And there were ideas, interesting ideas on what that would look like and who would be in charge of developing these. And the final one was communities of care, which is about supporting everyone in that community, and not just at the moment of birth, but the whole time. Next slide, please. Yeah. So I want to give the floor again to Susana for this beautiful, beautiful workshop that we did in Peru.
Yeah, so we go into Peru. So now we are going into Latin American region, and you can go to the next slide, Catherine. So this workshop, every place that the workshop took place has its own particularities, not only geographically, but in the way that we also gather the information, and we got into collect all these ideas. So first of all, in Peru, we were very aware of kind of the history of midwifery as well. And most of the participants were mestizos. Mestizos mean that midwives are, some of them were indigenous and indigenous and European descendants. And they were very focused on the birth that happens in public health hospitals, private hospitals, and also reimagining that the lack of choice that most of not only service users, but also the midwives have in order to how they want to provide their services, and the centers of old midwifery practice, because midwifery in Peru has been as a professional practice for about 200 years very soon. I think next year is going to be 200 years in Catherine, you can go to the next slide. So some of the systemic issues in perinatal care in Peru were that most of the attendants are very system-centric. So the practices are focused on the physiology of birth, but midwives really have to struggle and really struggle with the system make this happen. It was very clear when we were discussing with the midwives that, hey, create your own story and imagine the story and so on. All the stories, all the images ended up centering the midwife. So when we were discussing about the stories, we understood that there was a need for midwifery to be recognized. There was a need for midwives to actually be the center of the tension at one point, because there is no recognition of the work that we are doing. The midwives identify around 89 trends and problems that shape childbirth care in Peru today. So the workshop was in fact 3 days. We were very lucky that the College of Midwives of Peru arranged this beautiful place in the south of Lima. And they moved us, Marjolein, myself, and all the participants to into that area. And we spent together 2 nights, I think. And then, so the workshop will start in the morning until late in the afternoon, and we will gather together at the end. But the workshop was very, very dynamic. And it was not only midwives, but also we have Maria Jose. Maria Jose, it's a teacher, and she was really fundamental on engaging the participants into the project. And as you can see here, we were asking participants to share their ideas and put on post-its in this beautiful venue that we were gathering all together. Next slide. So as it happened in the Netherlands, we asked the midwives to start creating stories, imagining how the birth will happen in 100 years from now. So some of them decided to create storytelling. Some others made, what you can see at the lower, on your lower right, at the bottom, I think for me is the left hand, is a womb. So they collected a lot of plastic and then some leaves, and they created this as the future womb. Like the pregnancy was going to be very artificial, and then it will be, babies will be able to be created in an artificial womb. Some other midwives also started to create some mapping about what would happen in the future in terms of birthing, and then what would happen to midwifery as well. And as you can see also the top, in order to create the futures, Marjolein and some of the designers also created these images that you can see that one of our participants is looking at, and they were getting some inspiration about what the future would look like. Imagining mestizo midwives, for example, wearing this uniform because it's in the middle of a climate crisis, or some of the inspiration was coming also from the what would happen if there's another pandemic, right? You can go to the next slide. Reframing perinatal care using speculative design. You want to do that one, Marjolein, or is this still?
You can go ahead, I think.
Yeah. Okay. So one of the speculations that we had in Peru was the community building. It was very important because when we had the team or the group in Peru, we found out that most of the midwives, and that was intentional as well, some of the midwives came from very different contexts. Some of them were working in private hospitals. Some of them were independent midwives. Some of them were working for several years in public hospitals. There was some a male midwife as well. So we understood that the community building was very important in the future as well, as it was necessary in the present, but the future. The respect for cultural differences, the autonomy of birth in person. Most of the midwives were really adamant of whatever happens with technology, whatever would happen to medicine in general, the autonomy of birth in person was central for their practice. In the empowerment of women, and again, midwives. The next one, please, Catherine. So these are some of the images that we use to kind of stimulate the idea of what does the future look like for you, because at the very beginning, it was not very clear about, okay, what Susana, Marjolein, and Maria Jose want me to do? Like, what are you calling me for to think about the future? Because we're so focused either on what is going to happen, but not necessarily making a real connection to what a future is. So for that, we actually asked them to go back, and the first day of the workshop was really connection with how we were birthed. So Maria Jose, Marjolein, and myself, we share the stories of our own births, and the midwives organically started to connect with us through their birth stories. So there was some tears, there was very vulnerable moments, and it was like traveling across time, because the first day it was about our past and how the birth shape what we're doing as midwives right now. And as the days move on, so the next day we offer these images so they can start thinking about, okay, what the future can go from, even where you can have a baby, to what the hospital will look like, or what uniform the midwife will wear. So these were mainly to inspire some ideas to the participants. Next slide, Catherine. And this is one of the thank you texts that we have from our participants, because we really make a very good connection. I think more than a research this or a workshop, it was really a nice way to connect with midwives in a very colloquial way and very humanized way, because we all felt vulnerable during this whole process. And this midwife say, hey, she just randomly sent this text and said, good morning. Thank you so much for all the effort and for the meeting. It was a success. This was for Marjolein. Your personality made that dynamic very, very engaging and very it was very, very friendly. Thank you, thank you, thank you. All right, next one. All right.
Yeah, so we did 3 workshops, like we said. I'm just checking in a little bit because I think we have like 9 minutes, right? Am I correct? Yeah. So I'm just gonna brush over it a little bit, and I'm gonna skip a bit that goes about the images that we created, because I really want to have some time to take some questions if there are questions. Next slide, please. And so in India, we unfortunately, I couldn't go myself, but we had Priya Sharma, who was really amazing in facilitating the workshop in her hometown. And in India, it was really about reconnecting these old and new ways of birthing. It was about the ancient dye tradition. Dye is, if I understand correctly, I probably cannot do it as well as she would have done if she was here, but it's an old, also does midwife duties, but it's a central figure in the local communities who helped in childbirth and also knew some basic medicine, and it was prohibited I don't know, years ago in favor of stimulating women to give birth in hospital. But because of the lack of access in rural areas, this actually meant a decrease in the quality of care that these women received because they couldn't reach the hospitals, or it was very difficult for them to reach the hospitals. But recently they have reinstated the sort of midwife tradition with a certified midwifery system, and they are training midwives now also to help with births. Next slide, please. Yeah, systemic issues in perinatal care in India is the lack of access to these remote regions, but also very busy, congested delivery wards in public hospitals. And there are private hospitals, which generally have, I think, a higher level of care, but also a higher level of medicalization. And then there is epistemic and obstetric violence there as well. Next slide, please. Yeah, so I think this is the most telling slide about the workshop. Create the workshop in a local community center where women, old and young women, a lot of them mothers or grandmothers, gather. They can get food, they can get help with any questions they have about raising their family, and they come together just to talk and share experience. They already do that, I think, every couple of weeks. And Priya just happened to visit there, and she managed to sort of recruit a group of women to talk to them in 3 sessions about birth. And this was so interesting because I don't speak the local language. Priya was sort of translating. I was there on her phone, but they opened up so much about their experiences. And also here we created some really amazing images of birth. I don't know if that's the next slide. Can you check? Maybe move on to the next slide. Yeah. So these were made by Amrita, our warrior, who is my good friend and AI animation artist. So she uses AI to create these images. And what's interesting is that it's very hard to create these images that you see with AI, because if you type in birth, you get, I don't know, a white woman with a white sheet and white dress and an immaculate sort of birth with nothing there. But we wanted to have images of future birth in their own area. So she researched what this area looks like. She took things from the first workshop and worked them out in the second workshop to show people these. For example, this is a remote area where people have to walk on a dirt road and climb a little bit to get to a road where they can like take a bus to a hospital. So imagine being in labor and having to do that. So she imagined like, what if we had these sort of portable mobile vans that are fitted to, have all of the medical supplies for birth, and just have them react to that and reflect on that and talk about that. So that was really interesting to talk to these women and have them reflect on what's possible in birth. So I think because it's already 41, we have to end sharing things from our workshops here. We had some part about the role of AI in these future speculations, but I mean, we'll have to give you a rain check for that one. And maybe, Susana, if there's anything else you want to say, or can we just invite people to...
Yeah, let's go for the questions, I guess. I think they will have more questions for us. I can see on the chat box.
I saw 2
Yes,
questions.
there are already 2 questions.
Wait. I'm trying to come back on here. Okay, before we get to questions, I just want to briefly acknowledge Ms. Daisy Ortolina. I didn't introduce her, but she is new to VIDM this year, and she's learning the role of the facilitator. So welcome, Daisy.
Thank you very much.
And now let's see what we have. Let's see, great session. Is there a deadline for YouTube publications? I'm not sure.
I think I answered that one, Catherine. You said like about 4 weeks.
4 weeks, okay. Oh, for our sessions, okay,
Yeah.
yes. All right, and then some where people are from.
And there was a question here. If you're okay.
Okay, a machine for men to experience contractions. I don't know about that. We have something for them to wear to simulate pregnancy that's very big and heavy, but I don't know about labor contractions. What
Yeah,
do
they
you
did
do,
an experiment
Marjolein?
once. They did, I know they did. I don't know where this was from, but they did an experiment once with electrodes and just shocks or so, just having your muscles contract, and that should be similar to, I don't know, but yeah.
I've heard kidney stones is the closest that men can experience childbirth.
I saw Zia having 2 questions.
Okay, let's see. Where are we? Yes, here's a question. How did the Birth Futures Project explore or define the concepts of safe space and sacred space within the context? Were there different perspectives among stakeholders and the role of the midwife in safeguarding and enhancing the sacred aspects of birth, as well as clinical safety? Who asked that? Zia Bidan. So that's a lot of questions wrapped up in one, a lot of concepts.
Maybe I can answer the one about safe space and sacred space, and maybe Marjolein can elaborate on that. But I feel like we were very intentional, at least for the I wasn't necessarily engaged in the Netherlands once, but I was in Peru, and then for India, I kind of know some of that. But one of the ways to make it safe is that we really made sure that the people that were gonna be attending the workshops understood very well what we were doing. And then we foster a level of trust in the sense that we even share our own personal stories. We all were very vulnerable in that space. If your question goes in relates to the workshop. I don't know, Marjolein, do you want to?
Yeah, so I think for what they imagined would be a safe space from each and every one of the workshops, of course, it's different for everyone. Like one would be feeling more safe in a hospital. I think this was especially also true for the Indian women. And for another, it's a home birth with a midwife. Yeah, there were definitely different ideas about what is, I mean, and I couldn't follow all of the discussions because my Spanish is rudimentary at best, but you told me, Susana, that like the midwives we're not always seeing eye to eye, the Peruvian midwives. They have different ideas about what they consider a good or a safe space or a good birth. So yeah, definitely many different ideas. And I think that is the purpose of not having one best practice, but having all of these different ideas out for everyone to see and discuss. And I would also, I think it's really interesting, and you ask about that as well. I copied your question here. The midwives role, and I actually made a chapter of that in the zine of midwives as portals, because there's great potential in the role as midwife as a guide and as a way for people who go through the experience of pregnancy and childbirth to sort of come back to themselves. But it also depends on how critical a midwife can be and reflect on her own role in the system they have to operate in, and with all of these different things that people want from you, and maybe an inability even to have your voice heard by other caregivers. So it's too complex to answer, and I don't even, I mean, it's a thing that we've talked about as well, Susana, but I think that is something that comes back, and there are different ideas of that as well. But I do feel that everyone working in birth as either like a doula or a midwife, or in some kind of a not just medical but also a supporting role, has this desire to sort of be a guide, and it differs in how they fill this in, I think.
Right. Okay, so Zia has more questions, but in view of the time, I'm wondering, you said there are links to your Birth Futures project that maybe she could access online to have some of her questions answered. Is that possible?
Yeah, I put the link in the chat. I can put it there just one more time for
I'll
everyone.
put the link in the chat
Yeah.
because I know there are people would like to explore further.
Yeah, I think
And I want to finish up our whoops,
Yeah.
screen sharing.
I think the question was more about methodology. And
Right.
you can find that on the web page.
Okay. I just want to X out the chat. For some reason, it's not letting me Xing out the chat.